This is not actually tea, this is coffee, but if you're here for tea, don't worry, that's coming up. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My year of teaching English in Korea has ended. It actually ended like a couple weeks ago, but it is now time for me to make my official Teaching in Korea story time video. Oh boy, this is actually going to be two parts. Part one, which is this part right now, talks about the school itself, including like managers and coworkers and basically what goes on when you're not in class. That is what I'm covering now, which is the most dramatic thing I will be discussing. Part two will actually be about the children I actually taught and the children I met. I'll tell you guys some funny stories. The children were really touching, and I have a lot of funny and bright and happy things to say in the part two, but let's get the dark stuff out of the way first. So part one will, I promise, be the most dramatic of the two. There might even be a third video about a certain coworker I'll be discussing later, but we'll get to that. I have to say, before we start, my school was very problematic. A lot is wrong and messed up. But it is not a blacklist school. A lot of people that come to teach English in Korea or who are currently here know about the blacklist. The blacklist is a real list of blacklisted schools on the internet. It is updated anonymously. Schools that redeem themselves are taken off the list. Schools that fall from glory are put on the list. And what makes you a blacklist school is pulling stunts like not paying your teachers or paying them like 5 months late, saying you are sponsoring a visa when you're not sponsoring the visa, so they're working illegally and risk deportation. My school is not on the blacklist. It doesn't deserve to be on the blacklist. There was a period of time where I thought I would anonymously submit them to the blacklist. I call that period of time, as I wrote here in my notes, the dark ages. At the end of the day, at the end of my year, I will say ultimately not a bad place to work. No, it's not the best, but there were so many great things about it and so many things that I did enjoy. It doesn't deserve to be on the blacklist, but there is a lot that's wrong, and we're gonna talk about that soon. Here in my notes, I have broken down my year into 4 distinct periods of history. Our first period of history is lovingly referred to as the golden days. After the golden days, we fall into the descent. After the descent, we reach into the dark ages. And after the dark ages is a period of time I like to call recovery or damage control. So let's begin our tale. And our tale does begin in what we call the golden days. The golden days were when I started in mid-August to about the end of October. And the golden days were great. The golden days were a period of time where I just would get on the elevator in the morning and I would feel so thankful and so lucky, and I felt like the universe had done me so well by, of all the schools in Korea, putting me at the one I was at, because I just really liked the job. I loved the kids I was meeting, I loved my after school classes and what I had to teach. I loved the other foreign teachers. There was about 10 foreign teachers at my school, which sounds like a lot because some schools only have 1, but some huge schools have like 20. But so I was one of 10 foreign teachers, and there were about 10 other Korean teachers. And at the time, I genuinely liked almost every teacher there. I really liked everything about the job. My coworkers, my managers were super nice. I just felt so lucky to be there. But unfortunately, that had to end at the end of October. So the descent begins when one of the teachers leaves and her replacement comes. And at first, we're okay with him. Yeah, he seems really sheltered and really naive and really unaware of societal convention, but he was fine. Yeah, we had to teach him a lot of basic things like, hey, this is a copy machine. Oh, you're like 25 and don't know how to make a copy? That's fine. Maybe you've never been in an office setting. Here, I'll come show you how to use the copy machine. He was fine in the beginning, but the age of descent is named so because from the end of October to March, we being both foreign and Korean teachers, we progressively noticed that that same teacher I had mentioned, who was new and pretty naive and pretty sheltered, definitely had a personality disorder. And he was just really uncomfortable to be around. He ruined a lot of things. Like, he just couldn't do anything right. Anytime something went wrong, we all knew who it was. Basic things like, hey, after class, when you leave the classroom, turn the computer off. just things like that, he could never remember. And it became very, very uncomfortable for a lot of us to be around him or close to him, because usually when you work with someone or you just spend a lot of time around someone in general, you start to kind of recognize their energies, and you start to pick up when someone's in a good or bad mood, if they're laughing about something kind of on the inside, or if they're kind of sad, if they're sick, you start to pick up on their energy. But he never really had an energy to pick up on, and if you made direct eye contact, it just, nothing was there. Really, really empty eyes. And it got to the point where myself and one of my other closer friends of a coworker, he couldn't make eye contact with him. I couldn't make eye contact. We couldn't make eye contact with him. So like we would be in a confined space like the elevator, and this guy would like talk, and we would just be like staring at a fixed point because we were that uncomfortable to make direct eye contact with him, because it was scary, because we couldn't read his, you couldn't get a feel for him. He just didn't, somehow, simultaneously, he had so much personality and no personality. And one of my coworkers made a joke that he was character acting. But at the end of the day, I fully believe he does not have his own personality. He just tries to camouflage himself into his surroundings and environment, but it doesn't work because he's so creepy. And he was just so bad. I have so many stories about him. If you guys want my coworker had a personality disorder video and you want me to share all my creepy and weird stories with you, I will, so let me know. But so that was the period of descent where I was still fine and things were still fine, but I was noticing smaller issues around the school, and also I had a coworker that was just like always ruining things and always super uncomfortable to be around. So come March, the dark ages begin, and the dark ages are ushered in by one very specific person. We are going to call him Mr. An. An is not his real name. Any resemblance to a real Korean man named Mr. An, who is a manager at a hagwon, is purely coincidental. His name is not Mr. An, but I will not say his real name because he still deserves some respect, I guess. Mr. An had already worked at our school before for a number of years, but then the parent company that owns many schools sent him to a different location. That location failed, and instead of letting everyone go, they thought, hey, just go back to this other school. We already had 2 presidents, and now we have 3. And they all got different names, but at the end of the day, I don't know what any of them did, and we definitely didn't need 3 of them. But so he comes back to our school. Our managers and some of the teachers that were there when he was still working there, they were like, oh, he's great. He comes from a background of education. He used to be a teacher himself. He's definitely pro-teacher, for the teacher. If the management team tries to throw some nonsense in our face, like he'll defend us, he'll stand up for us, he's great. And I was like, cool, awesome. He's like fine, we're all super respectful, and we're like, hey, guy in the hallway, and his English isn't great, it's not fluent. But so he's fine for a bit, whatever. And then a meeting is held. And at this meeting, our manager has to translate because he either doesn't know enough English or pretends he doesn't know enough English to have a meeting himself. So our manager had to translate for him. And he basically says, hi, there's an issue with the budget, so we're cutting overtime pay for teachers. It was in our contract that once or twice a month, we would have to come in to work Saturdays or Sundays, usually Sundays. Saturdays weren't so bad because they were one school that would come in together for a one-day camp. Sundays were notoriously awful. It was pretty well known as being like, okay, every parent that doesn't want to deal with their problem child sends them here for Sunday. Usually the kids were just like rowdy and they didn't want to be there, and they would like rip things up, and it was just horrible. Sundays were horrible. But we survived, and none of us really complained because the overtime pay was sweet. So to tell all the teachers that the budget isn't great, so we're cutting overtime pay, but you still need to work weekends, we were livid. So we were wondering, can't the budget be cut anywhere else? I'm sorry, I thought this was a school where without teachers you have literally nothing. How naive of me to think that teachers would be important and that they deserve to be paid for babysitting screaming children during their weekend. So yeah, we were all pretty furious. It got to the point where 9 out of 10 foreign teachers were like, hey, we could group quit. And then what would they do? They'd be screwed. We could just leave. We could get another teaching job, switch visas, go. But we didn't do that, obviously. But it was pretty bad because on top of that, there were rumors that the school was going under anyway. And there were some signs, we had some suspicions. So it felt like the school was going under and we might be fired anyway because the school was about to close. So we were kind of like, let's jump ship before we have to work another Sunday with screaming kids and get fired anyway. Obviously we didn't do that, but that was the point it got to. Then this guy announces, as if we'd all be so thrilled, announces that he is going to build a pond in the school's front yard. What, you're not overjoyed that I'm going to build a pond in the front yard? No, dude, where are you getting that money from? It's not coming out of your pocket. Why isn't it going into ours for babysitting on Sundays? So he starts to kind of like lay out this plan in the front yard of where he's gonna be building this pond. And our manager has to like put his neck on the line and take him aside and be like, hey, the teachers are gonna revolt if you spend money to build a pond that could be going towards their overtime pay. Maybe this isn't the best choice and it kind of shows people that the budget is not being spent in fair places. So he was like, fine, I'm not gonna build a pond. I'll get a chicken coop and 30 chicks. Yes, this guy got a chicken coop and a lot of chicks, and instead of a pond, there was a chicken coop in our front yard. We came to notice that when chickens grew up, they would go missing, and we asked where they went. He was eating them. He was raising chickens in the front yard so that he could slaughter and consume them. So through a lot of meetings and conversations and threat of a petition going around, Mr. An decided we could have our overtime pay back. Thank God. And then he wanted to be thanked for it and praised for finding a way to work around the budget so that we get overtime pay. And this is where I noticed that working under Mr. An it felt parallel to being in an emotionally manipulative relationship. And with lots of other small examples, it just became clear that he would purposefully take privileges away, privileges that were not privileges, privileges that were part of our contract. Give us things that were ours to begin with, take them away, give them back, and expect to be praised. Very manipulative. God, he's such a rat, and he did it with this smirk and smile, like he was akin to God, like he was just the best boss we could ever hope for. He was awful. So while we're dealing with Mr. An, Mr. Personality Disorder is ascending further into madness and making all of us progressively more physically and emotionally uncomfortable in our workplace. All right, enough about the dark ages. Let's move on to the next period of history at this job, which I call, damage control. This period only lasted a month, about the month before I left, roughly those last couple of weeks. A bunch of teachers had been hired at the same time. Around 4, the one with the personality disorder actually left his contract before it ended. He left a couple weeks before me. So there was this like huge chunk of time where a bunch of new teachers were gonna come, and some of them had never taught in Korea before like me, and our manager had to literally have a meeting with all the foreign teachers and tell us to not talk shit for the first couple weeks that the new teachers were here. And he was so sympathetic. So he was like sitting with us and he was like, I know how things have been. I know how much you guys have gone through. I know how you guys talk about things here. Please don't say those things in the first couple weeks that these new teachers are here. And we were like, fine, understandable, because like I look back to my golden days when I loved my job there, and I'm glad I'm able to look back and say I loved my job there. Like I don't want a new teacher to show up and be happy and for me to be like, oh, just you wait until Mr. An pulls some fuck shit. I'm not gonna rob them of their chance at having some golden days. There were plenty of little things, plenty of little moments, plenty of individual instances that I hated about my job, but I did not hate the job itself. Again, I loved the kids. I loved my after school kids. I can't wait to do like the funny story time and just talk about the kids. So loved the kids and I loved my coworkers. And at the end of the day, the environment makes the job. You can get what you think is your dream job, but if you hate all your coworkers, you're not gonna have fun. And I was lucky enough to really like all of 90% of my coworkers. And the grass is always greener. Like plenty of teachers left our school and went somewhere else. And yeah, some things were better, some things were worse. Like, yeah, pay is a lot better, but I'm the only foreign teacher and I don't really hang out with anyone around my school because I'm the only foreigner here. So the grass is always greener. I don't want to deter anyone from coming to teach English in Korea. There are always going to be pros and cons of working at a place. And I do think that because me and the other teachers I was working with at the time went through the dark ages, like Mr. An is not going to try to take away overtime pay again. So I don't think my replacement and I don't think other teachers in the future are going to have to deal with the same things I dealt with. So hopefully when they have their golden days in the future, it doesn't only last the first couple of months. Hopefully it can last most of their year. I don't regret working there. I made some great friends and some great memories. So yeah, that is my teaching in Korea storytime number 1. I wanted to wait until the year was over to film it so that I could have this full perspective. Like I was gonna film a rage video during the middle of the dark ages. I'm glad I didn't because I don't want that to be the representative piece of media for my experience as a teacher. Because really, like, I liked my kids, I liked my coworkers. What's more important than that? If you're thinking of coming to Korea to teach English, check that the school that wants to hire you is not on the blacklist. If you Google it, you'll find it. It's pretty easy to find and it is updated regularly by at least one anonymous person. So make sure you're checking the blacklist. So I'll see you guys in that video. Thank you so much for watching this one. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.